Katie Bennett stood in the bright white medical bay, her arms crossed as she watched the three small creatures sleep. The alien cubs were curled up together in a special glass container that kept them warm and safe. Each one was about the size of a house cat, with soft gray fur and tiny paws that twitched as they dreamed. Katie felt her chest tighten as she remembered finding them on that frozen planet, alone and dying in the cold. It had been 3 days since the rescue mission on Theta 7. 3 days since Katie had made the choice that changed everything. She had been part of a Marine squad sent to evacuate a research station before an ice storm hit. They were supposed to grab the scientists and leave. Nobody said anything about finding alien children left to freeze in the ruins of a destroyed village, but Katie had heard them crying. Soft, desperate sounds coming from a collapsed building. While her squad rushed back to the transport ship, Katie had broken formation and searched through the rubble. She found them huddled together, their small bodies already turning blue from the cold. Their parents were dead nearby, killed by weapons fire that had torn through the settlement. Katie had looked at those 3 tiny faces and made her decision in seconds. She opened her powered armor and pulled them inside against her chest. The armor's life support system kicked in, sharing her body heat with the freezing cubs. She could feel their small hearts beating against her skin as she ran through the blizzard to reach the ship. Now the transport ship Valiant was carrying them all toward Gateway 7, the nearest human station. Katie had expected a simple debrief and maybe a medal for saving 3 lives. Instead, she walked into a political nightmare that nobody had prepared her for. Commander Greg Palmer found her in the medical bay that afternoon. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many difficult situations. He stood next to Katie and looked at the sleeping cubs for a long moment before speaking. "Do you know what you found, Corporal?" he asked quietly. Katie shook her head. 3 kids who needed help, sir," Greg sighed. "They're Valen. Do you know what that means?" "No, sir. It means their entire species was nearly wiped out 6 years ago. The Crithian Empire invaded their homeworld and destroyed everything. We thought they were all gone. These 3 cubs might be some of the last of their kind alive in the galaxy." Katie felt her stomach drop. She looked at the sleeping cubs with new eyes, understanding the weight of what she carried. "So we saved them. That's good, right?" Greg's expression darkened. "The Crithians say they own them. They're calling the cubs war prizes. Ancient laws from conquest traditions that most species stopped following centuries ago. But the Crithians still use those rules and they're demanding we hand over the cubs." "Like hell," Katie said, her voice sharp and angry. "I found them dying. Their parents were murdered. The Crithians left them to freeze to death. They don't get to claim them now." "I agree with you, Corporal, but it's not that simple. The Crithian Empire has hundreds of warships. We're still new to this galactic community. If we refuse, there could be consequences." Katie turned to face her commander directly. "Sir, with respect, I don't care about politics. Those are children. Living, breathing children who deserve a chance to grow up. I didn't save them from freezing just to hand them over to the people who killed their families." Greg studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. Because Admiral Cruz is going to need people with that attitude in the next few days. The Crithians are already sending a ship to Gateway 7. They'll be waiting when we arrive." Before Katie could respond, the medical bay door opened again. A woman in a white coat walked in, carrying a data pad and looking worried. Dr. Lisa Morgan was the ship's expert on alien biology, and she had been studying the cubs since they came aboard. "Corporal Bennett, we need to talk," Lisa said, glancing at the commander. "It's about the cubs' condition. Are they okay?" Katie asked immediately, stepping closer to the glass container. "Physically, they're healing well. The frostbite damage was severe, but they'll recover. However, I've discovered something important about Velan's psychology and development." Lisa pulled up images on her data pad. "These cubs have imprinted on you." "Imprinted?" "It's a biological bonding process. Valen young form an unbreakable connection to whoever saves their life or cares for them during a crisis. The cubs recognize your voice, your scent, even the electromagnetic signature of your armor. To them, you're not just a rescuer. You're family now." Katie felt something warm spread through her chest. She looked at the smallest cub, the one she had been privately calling Hope. "What does that mean for them?" Lisa's expression turned serious. "It means separating them from you would cause massive psychological trauma. Valen cubs who lose their bonded caretaker often refuse to eat. They can die from the stress. In their minds, you're their mother now. They need you to survive. Greg rubbed his face with both hands. This complicates everything. The Crithians won't care about imprinting or trauma. They'll say it's just biology. Then they can go to hell, Katie said firmly. I'm not abandoning these kids. I don't care what some empire says about ancient laws. We're supposed to be the good guys, right? We're supposed to protect people who can't protect themselves. Even if it means starting a war? Greg asked quietly. Katie looked at the 3 sleeping cubs. Hope stirred slightly, making a soft chirping sound in her sleep. The sound reminded Katie of birds back on Earth, innocent and pure. She thought about all the reasons she had joined the Marines in the first place. To defend the helpless. To stand up for what was right. To be someone who made a difference. Yes, sir, she said finally. Even if it means war. Because if we hand over children to their murderers just because we're scared, then we're not worth defending anyway. Greg was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened his uniform and nodded. Gateway 7 in 6 hours. Get some rest, Corporal. You're going to need it. And Katie? Yes, sir. What you did on Theta 7 was brave. What you're doing now is braver. Don't let anyone tell you different. After Greg left, Katie stayed in the medical bay. She placed her hand against the glass container, and Hope moved closer in her sleep as if sensing her presence. Lisa stood beside her making notes on her data pad. They're beautiful, aren't they? Lisa said softly. Even after everything they've been through. They're survivors, Katie replied. Just like humans. Maybe that's why I couldn't leave them behind. I saw something familiar in their eyes. As the Valiant continued its journey toward Gateway 7, Katie made a silent promise to the 3 small beings sleeping peacefully before her. No matter what happened next, no matter what powerful forces stood against them, she would keep them safe. She had sheltered them in her armor when they were freezing, and she would shelter them with her life if necessary. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. They didn't abandon their own, and anyone Katie Bennett decided to protect became her own. The Valiant docked at Gateway 7 exactly on schedule, sliding into the massive station's bay like a small fish swimming into the mouth of a whale. Katie stood at the viewing port with Jake Morrison, her squad leader and friend. Together they stared at the ship that was waiting for them in orbit above the station. The Crithian battlecruiser was huge and dark, shaped like a blade designed to cut through space itself. Its name was Shadow of Dominion, and just looking at it made Katie's hands clench into fists. That ship represented everything she hated. Power without mercy, strength without compassion, the willingness to murder children and then claim ownership of the survivors. That's a lot of guns, Jake said quietly. He was a solid man with brown hair and a scar across his chin from a training accident years ago. Our whole station couldn't take that thing in a straight fight. Then we don't fight straight, Katie replied. We fight smart. Jake gave her a look that mixed respect with concern. You know this could get bad, right? Like really bad. War bad. I know. And you're still going to fight for those cubs? Katie turned to face him. Jake, you were there on Theta 7. You heard them crying in that building. Could you have walked away? Jake was quiet for a moment. No, I couldn't have. But I'm not the one who has to testify. In front of the Admiral in 30 minutes, Gateway. 7's command center was a circular room filled with screens and stations, where officers monitored everything happening in the system. Admiral Helen Cruz sat at the center like a queen on her throne, watching multiple displays at once. She was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that missed nothing. Katie stood at attention in front of her, feeling small and exposed. Around the room, other officers worked at their stations, but she could feel them listening to every word. This wasn't just a debriefing. This was a decision that would affect everyone. Corporal Bennett, Admiral Cruz said, her voice clear and strong. Tell me exactly what you found on Theta 7. Leave nothing out. Katie took a breath and began. She described the evacuation mission, the storm rolling in, the sounds that made her break formation. She talked about finding the destroyed settlement, the dead Velan adults with blast wounds, and the 3 cubs huddled together and dying from the cold. She explained her choice to shelter them inside her armor, feeling their tiny hearts beating against her chest as she ran through the blizzard. The Crithians killed their parents, Katie said, her voice steady but angry. They burned the village and left children to freeze. Now they want to claim those same children as property. That's not law, Admiral. That's evil. One of the officers, Captain Paul Henderson, spoke up from his tactical station. The Crithian commander has given us 6 hours to hand over the cubs. After that, he says there will be consequences. His exact words were that Gateway 7 exists at his pleasure. Admiral Cruz leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Let me make sure I understand our situation. We have 3 alien children who are legally claimed by a powerful empire, under ancient conquest rights. Those children are biologically bonded to one of our Marines and will die if separated from her. The Crithians have a warship that could destroy this station in under an hour. Does that cover it? Yes, ma'am, Katie said. Except for one thing. They're not property. They're people, scared, hurt people who need protection. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? The Admiral studied Katie for a long moment. Around the command center, work had stopped. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what humanity would choose. Safety or principle, fear or courage. How old are you, Corporal? The Admiral asked. 24, ma'am. And you're willing to risk starting an interstellar war over 3 children you've known for 3 days? Katie didn't hesitate. Yes, ma'am. Because if we won't fight for them, what will we fight for? The Crithians are betting we'll cave because we're scared. They think humans are weak. I say we show them different. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, if I may, I have an idea. We could create a diversion. Get some ships to draw off the Crithian cruiser while a small team sneaks the Cubs out through the back channels. There's uncharted space beyond the Veil Nebula. We could hide them there. And who would stay with them? The Admiral asked. Dr. Morgan says they need Corporal Bennett or they'll die. I'll go, Katie said immediately. I'll disappear with them. Take them somewhere safe. The Crithians can't chase what they can't find. Admiral Cruz shook her head slowly. No, we're not doing that. Katie felt her heart sink. Ma'am, please. I'm begging you. Don't give them to the Crithians. I'm not, the Admiral said, standing up from her chair. And we're not running either. Paul, raise the station shields. Charge all defensive weapons. Open a channel to that Crithian cruiser. The command center erupted into activity. Officers rushed to their stations, calling out status reports. Paul worked his controls, and on the main screen, the image of a Crithian commander appeared. He was tall with dark scales and eyes like yellow stones. His expression showed nothing but contempt. I am Commander Vexthor of the Shadow of Dominion, he said, his voice translated into English by the computer. You have my property aboard your station. Surrender it now. Admiral Cruz stood tall, her hands clasped behind her back. I am Admiral Helen Cruz of the Terran Defense Forces. The Velan Cubs are not property. They are sentient beings under our protection. We will not surrender them. Vexthor's eyes narrowed. You are a young species playing with forces you don't understand. The Crithian Empire has existed for 10,000 years. We have crushed civilizations older and stronger than yours. Do not make the mistake of thinking you can defy us. We're not defying you, Admiral Cruz said calmly. We're telling you no. There's a difference. Those children were left to die. Corporal Bennett saved them. By any moral standard in this galaxy, they belong with her now. Morality is for the weak, Vexthor sneered. You have 5 hours remaining. Use them to reconsider. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Katie realized she was holding her breath. She had expected the Admiral to negotiate, to try and find a middle path. Instead, she had drawn a line in the sand and dared the Crithians to cross it. Ma'am? Paul said quietly. That cruiser is moving into attack position. They're charging weapons. Let them, Admiral Cruz replied. Broadcast my statement to every ship in the system. All channels. Make sure everyone knows what's happening here. As Paul worked, the Admiral turned to Katie. Go to the Cubs. Stay with them. If things go bad, we'll have evacuation ships ready. But Corporal, understand this. I'm not doing this just for 3 children. I'm doing it because humanity needs to decide what kind of species we're going to be in this galaxy. We can be the kind that caves to bullies, or we can be the kind that stands up for what's right. Today we find out which one we are. Katie saluted, feeling a mix of fear and pride. Thank you, ma'am. As she left the command center with Jake, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors as crew members rushed to battle stations. This was really happening. Gateway 7 was preparing for war. You started something big, Jake said as they jogged toward the medical bay. I saved 3 kids, Katie corrected. The Crithians are the ones who turned it into something big. When they reached the medical bay, Katie found Dr. Morgan already moving the Cubs to a secure location deeper in the station. The 3 small beings were awake now, chirping nervously and looking around with wide eyes. Hope saw Katie and immediately reached toward her, making distressed sounds. Katie went to them, letting Hope climb onto her shoulder. The small cub pressed against her neck, seeking comfort. "It's okay," Katie whispered. "I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you." Through the station's windows, she could see the shadow of Dominion moving closer. Its weapons glowed with building energy. Katie held Hope a little tighter and waited to see if humanity would survive its decision to choose compassion over fear. The 5-hour deadline ticked down. The galaxy held its breath, and 3 small cubs, saved from freezing by a Marine who refused to look away, became the most important beings in known space. 4 hours remained on the deadline when something unexpected happened. The station's sensors picked up new arrivals dropping out of faster-than-light travel. 3 ships appeared on the screens in the command center, and none of them were human. Admiral Cruz stared at the display, trying to understand what she was seeing. A heavy cruiser with blue markings that identified it as Taraxian, a sleek science vessel from the Beltheran Collective, and a small diplomatic ship bearing the symbols of the Quill Confederacy. 3 alien species arriving at Gateway 7 at humanity's darkest hour. "Are they here to help the Crithians?" Paul asked, his voice tight with worry. Before anyone could answer, a communication request came through from the Taraxian cruiser. Admiral Cruz accepted it, and the screen filled with the image of a being that looked almost like a bear standing upright, with thick fur and intelligent eyes. "I am Captain Ronar of the Taraxian ship Steadfast," the alien said in surprisingly good English. "We received your broadcast about the Velan cubs. We are here to stand with you." Katie, watching from the medical bay on a smaller screen, felt her heart leap. Jake gripped her shoulder, his eyes wide with surprise. "Why?" Admiral Cruz asked the question everyone was thinking. "Why would you risk conflict with the Crithian Empire for 3 children you've never met?" Ronar's expression grew sad. "Because 5 years ago the Crithians invaded our world. They killed millions of my people before we managed to drive them back. They claimed it was their right under ancient conquest laws. We barely survived. When we heard that humans were willing to fight for orphaned children against those same laws, we knew we had to support you. Someone needs to stand against the Crithians. Perhaps together we are strong enough." The Beltheran ship opened communication next. Its captain was a being that looked almost like a floating jellyfish, beautiful and strange. "We Beltherans value all life. Our science has taught us that every sentient being deserves the chance to grow and learn. We cannot support a system where children are treated as objects. We add our voice to yours, Admiral Cruz." Finally, the small diplomatic ship from the Quill Confederacy sent its message. The Quill were bird-like beings known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and neutral stance in most conflicts. Their ambassador, an elderly female named Singing Wind, spoke with calm authority. "The Galactic Council has been watching this situation develop. Many species are uncomfortable with how the Crithians use ancient laws to justify cruelty. Your broadcast has created an opportunity for change. I am here to propose an emergency council session to address this matter properly. But I wanted you to know that you are not alone, Admiral. Many species admire your courage." Katie watched as the Admiral processed this information. The situation had changed completely in minutes. What had been a standoff between one human station and a Crithian warship had become something much larger. Other species were choosing sides, and some of them were choosing humanity. Commander Vexthor must have realized it too. His image appeared on the screens again, his expression showing anger for the first time. "This is a matter between the Crithian Empire and the humans. Other species should not interfere. The galaxy doesn't work that way anymore," Captain Ronar replied, his voice growling with barely controlled rage. "You made it everyone's business when you broadcast your threats across all channels. Now everyone knows what you're trying to do. Take children from those who saved them. Claim living beings as property. Use fear to get your way. How many species will you threaten before someone says enough?" More ships began arriving. Not all of them were friendly. Some came to support the Crithians. Others came simply to watch. But enough arrived to support humanity that Commander Vexthor found himself facing not one station, but a growing coalition of different species united by a simple idea. Children should not be treated as objects to be claimed. In the medical bay, Dr. Morgan was examining the cubs when Ambassador Claire Woods arrived. Claire was humanity's representative to the Galactic Council, a sharp woman with red hair and eyes that seemed to see through any lie. She had been working behind the scenes since the crisis started, and she looked exhausted but satisfied. "Corporal Bennett," Claire said, nodding to Katie. Your rescue has become the most important political moment in recent galactic history. Do you understand what's happening? Ships are showing up, Katie said, holding Hope close as the cub chirped nervously. Some want to help us. It's more than that, Claire explained. For decades, species have been frustrated with Crithian aggression. They conquer worlds and then hide behind ancient laws that most civilizations stopped using centuries ago. But everyone was too afraid to challenge them. You gave them a reason to stand up. 3 small children who deserve better than to be claimed as trophies. Jake spoke up from where he stood guard at the door. So what happens now? Do we fight or talk? Both, Claire said. The Quill Confederacy is calling for an emergency council session. It will be held on neutral ground at Station Epsilon. The cubs will be brought there. So will you, Corporal. You'll need to testify about what you found and why you made the choices you did. Katie felt her stomach tighten. I'm just a Marine. I'm not good at politics. You don't need to be good at politics, Claire replied. You just need to tell the truth. The galaxy needs to see that these are real children who suffered real trauma. They need to see the person who saved them and understand why. Can you do that? Katie looked down at Hope, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder. The small cub's chest rose and fell with each breath, peaceful and trusting. Spark and Luna were curled together in Dr. Morgan's arms, their tiny paws twitching in their sleep. These were not objects. They were people. Small, vulnerable people who deserved the chance to grow up safe and loved. I can do that, Katie said firmly. The deadline passed without violence. Commander Vexthor, faced with a coalition of ships and the prospect of a major galactic incident, agreed to the council session. But his final words to Admiral Cruz were chilling. You have won a delay, not a victory. The council will rule in favor of traditional law. It always does. And when it does, I will personally come to collect what belongs to the Crithian Empire. Enjoy your small triumph while it lasts. 2 days later, Katie found herself on a transport ship heading toward Station Epsilon. Jake and a security team came with her, along with Dr. Morgan and the 3 cubs. The cubs were nervous about the new ship, but Hope refused to leave Katie's side. Wherever Katie went, the small cub followed, climbing on her shoulders or curling up in her lap. They really did imprint on you, Jake said, watching Hope groom Katie's hair with her tiny paws. It's kind of amazing. It's responsibility, Katie replied. These 3 depend on me. I can't let them down. Through the transport's windows, she could see other ships traveling toward Station Epsilon. The entire galaxy seemed to be converging on this one place to witness what would happen. Some ships carried reporters from different species eager to cover the story. Others brought diplomats and lawyers. A few were warships just in case violence broke out. Dr. Morgan sat nearby reading through Velan history on her datapad. Did you know the Velan were peaceful explorers? They never had a military. When the Crithians invaded, they had no way to fight back. It wasn't war. It was slaughter. How many survived? Katie asked quietly. Maybe 50 scattered across the galaxy. Most of them were off-world when the invasion happened. Scientists, diplomats, students studying at other species universities. They came home to find their entire civilization destroyed. Lisa looked at the 3 sleeping cubs. These 3 might be the youngest Velan left alive. If they die, their species loses its future. Katie felt the weight of that knowledge settle on her shoulders like armor. She had saved 3 lives on a frozen planet because it was the right thing to do. She hadn't thought about species survival or galactic politics. But now those 3 lives had become symbols of something much larger. Hope for the hopeless. Protection for the vulnerable. The idea that might doesn't make right. As Station Epsilon came into view, Katie made a promise to herself. No matter what the Galactic Council decided, no matter what laws they cited or traditions they defended, she would not give up these cubs. She had sheltered them in her armor when they were freezing. She would shelter them with everything she had now. The galaxy was about to judge whether human compassion was strength or foolishness. Katie was ready to show them it was both. Station Epsilon was enormous, larger than any structure Katie had ever seen. It hung in space like a wheel, neutral territory that belonged to no single species but served as a meeting place for the Galactic Council. As Katie's transport docked, she could see hundreds of other ships from dozens of different civilizations. The entire galaxy had come to watch this trial. The council chamber was designed to hold representatives from over 40 species. It was a circular room with rising tiers of seats, each section marked with different symbols and colors. At the center was a raised platform where witnesses would stand, exposed to the judgment of dozens of alien eyes. Katie felt small looking at it, like an insect about to be examined under a microscope. She wore her dress uniform, the one reserved for formal occasions. Jake and 2 other Marines stood behind her as security. Dr. Morgan sat in a special section with the 3 cubs in a portable containment unit that kept them comfortable and safe. Hope pressed her small paws against the transparent wall, watching Katie with worried eyes. The Crithian prosecutor was a veteran diplomat named Zorkai. He was older than Commander Vexthor, with silver markings on his dark scales and eyes that had watched countless legal battles. He moved through the chamber like he owned it, confident and cold. Katie disliked him immediately. Humanity's lawyer was a man named Nathan Cole. He was younger than Katie expected, maybe in his 30s, with brown hair and glasses that made him look more like a teacher than a warrior. But when he shook her hand, his grip was firm and his eyes were sharp. "Just tell the truth," Nathan said quietly. "Don't let them make you angry. Don't let them twist your words. The truth is powerful enough on its own." The council session began with Magistrate Ornith calling for order. Ornith was from the Quill Confederacy, an ancient bird-like being whose feathers had turned gray with age. His voice carried authority that made the entire chamber fall silent. "We are gathered to determine the fate of 3 Velan cubs rescued by human forces. The Crithian Empire claims ownership under conquest rights. Humanity claims protection under moral obligation. Both sides will present their arguments. We will listen to all evidence before rendering judgment." Zorkai went first. He spoke with practiced ease, his words flowing like water. He talked about tradition and law, about how the galaxy had operated for thousands of years. He presented documents and treaties, showing how conquered territories and their survivors belonged to the victors. He made it sound reasonable, like the Crethians were simply following rules that everyone had agreed to long ago. "The Velan homeworld fell to Crithian forces 6 years ago," Zorkai explained. "By the laws of conquest, all Velan property and survivors became subjects of the Empire. These 3 cubs are no different. They are Crethian assets rescued from a harsh environment by humans who did not understand the legal situation. We acknowledge the humans acted with good intentions, but good intentions do not change ownership rights." Katie wanted to scream. The way Zorkai talked made it sound like the cubs were furniture left behind in an abandoned house. He never mentioned that they were living, breathing children. He never talked about their murdered parents or the fact that the Crithians had deliberately left them to die. When Nathan stood to present humanity's case, he took a different approach. He called witnesses. The first was a Velan anthropologist named Swift River, one of the few adults of her species still alive. She was small and graceful, with silver fur and eyes that held deep sadness. Swift River spoke about Velan culture, about their strong family bonds and their peaceful way of life. She described how Velan cubs formed unbreakable connections with their caretakers, how breaking those bonds could kill them. Then Nathan showed her the 3 cubs through a video feed. Swift River's reaction was immediate and emotional. She gasped, covering her mouth with her paws. Tears ran down her face as she stared at the screen. "They're so young," she whispered. "Barely old enough to be away from their parents. The trauma they must have experienced. Can you examine them?" Nathan asked gently. "Can you tell us what happened to them?" Swift River approached the cubs' containment unit with Dr. Morgan's permission. She spoke to them in the Velan language, soft clicking sounds that made Hope's ears perk up. The cub responded hesitantly, and Swift River listened carefully. When she turned back to the council, her expression was horrified. These cubs were in their home when the attack happened. They watched their parents die protecting them. Someone, a Crithian soldier, threw them into the cold and sealed the door so they couldn't escape. They were meant to freeze to death slowly. They remember everything. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Even species that supported the Crithians looked uncomfortable. Zorkai stood quickly. "This is emotional manipulation. The rules of war are clear. Casualties happen." "These were not casualties," Nathan replied, his voice sharp. "This was deliberate murder of children. And now the people who tried to kill them want to claim them as property. Does that sound like justice to anyone here?" Nathan called more witnesses. Survivors from other species conquered by the Crithians testified about similar situations. Children orphaned and then claimed. Families torn apart, always hiding behind ancient laws that treated sentient beings as objects. Then Nathan called Katie to the stand. She walked to the center platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes watching her. Hope chirped from the containment unit, a worried sound. Katie took a breath and focused on Nathan. "Corporal Bennett, tell us what you found on Theta 7, Nathan said. Katie described everything. Finding the destroyed settlement, the dead Velan adults with blast wounds, the 3 cubs huddled together, their small bodies turning blue from cold. She talked about the choice she made to shelter them in her armor, feeling their hearts beating against her chest as she ran through the blizzard. "Why did you do it?" Nathan asked. "You could have left them, followed orders, avoided all of this trouble." Katie looked directly at the council members. "Because they were kids. Scared, hurt kids who needed help. Where I come from, you don't walk away from that. You don't leave children to die just because it's easier or safer. You protect them. That's what makes us human." Zorkai stood for his cross-examination. He tried to make Katie look like a naive young soldier who didn't understand galactic politics. He suggested her emotions had clouded her judgment. He implied that keeping the cubs was selfish, that she was denying them their proper place in Crithian society. Katie listened to every question, staying calm like Nathan had taught her. Then she gave her answers, simple and clear. "Do the Crithians have schools for Velan cubs?" she asked Zorkai. "Do they have caretakers who understand Velan psychology? Do they have other Velan for these 3 to grow up with? Or would they just be prisoners in a culture that murdered their families?" Zorkai had no good answer for that. He sat down, looking frustrated for the first time. The final piece of evidence came from Dr. Morgan. She presented medical data, showing the cubs' imprint on Katie was complete and irreversible at this stage of their development. Separating them now would cause catastrophic psychological damage. They might refuse to eat. They would definitely experience severe trauma. They could die from the stress. "These cubs recognize Corporal Bennett as family now," Lisa explained. "Not just intellectually, but biologically. Their brain chemistry has changed. Their hearts literally beat in rhythm with hers when she's close. Breaking that bond would be like ripping away part of their souls." The council deliberated for hours. Katie sat with the cubs, holding Hope while Spark and Luna played nearby. Jake brought her food, but she couldn't eat. Everything depended on what these alien judges decided. Finally, Magistrate Ornith called the council back to order. His ancient eyes swept across the chamber before he spoke. "We have heard testimony from both sides. We have examined law and tradition. We have considered the welfare of 3 innocent lives. The council has reached a decision." Katie held her breath. Hope seemed to sense her tension and pressed closer. "The Sentience Protection Accords are among the oldest treaties in galactic history," Ornith continued. "They state clearly that no sentient being under the age of maturity can be claimed as property under any circumstances, including conquest rights. The Crithian Empire signed these accords 3,000 years ago. They are bound by them." Zorkai stood up angrily. "Those accords don't apply to war situations." "They apply to all situations involving children," Ornith replied firmly. "The council rules that the 3 Velan cubs cannot be claimed as Crithian property. They are free beings, however they require proper care and guidance. Corporal Katie Bennett is hereby assigned as their legal guardian, responsible for their welfare, safety, and education. Humanity will be monitored to ensure these cubs receive appropriate care and connection to their own culture. The Crithian Empire is ordered to pay reparations to the Velan Survivors Fund for the destruction of the Velan homeworld." The chamber erupted. Some species cheered. Others protested. The Crithian delegation walked out in fury. Katie just held Hope tighter, tears running down her face. They had won. The cubs were safe. But as Commander Vexithor passed her on his way out, he stopped and leaned close. "Enjoy your victory, human. The Crithian Empire has a long memory. This is not over." 6 months had passed since the council ruling, and Katie stood in the morning sunshine of New Haven watching 3 young Velan play in the grass. The colony world was peaceful and beautiful, with purple sky and 2 suns that made everything glow with warm light. This was home now, far from the military life she had known, but infinitely more meaningful. Hope had grown noticeably in those months. She was almost twice the size she had been when Katie first found her, though still small compared to what adult Velan would be. Her gray fur had developed subtle patterns, and her eyes were bright with curiosity about everything. She spotted Katie watching and bounded over, chirping excitedly about a flower she had found. "Look, Katie, look." Hope's English was getting better every day. though she still mixed in Velan clicking sounds when she was excited. Blue petals with yellow inside. Dr. Morgan says it's called a sunburst bloom. Katie knelt down to examine the flower Hope held carefully in her paws. It's beautiful. Did you thank the plant for sharing? Yes, Hope nodded seriously. Velan culture taught respect for all living things, and Swift River had been teaching the cubs their people's traditions during her monthly visits. I told it we would remember its gift. Spark and Luna came running over, tumbling over each other in their eagerness. Spark, the largest of the three, was already showing signs of being adventurous and bold. Luna was gentler, more thoughtful, often sitting for hours watching clouds or studying insects. Together, the three cubs were a constant source of joy and chaos. Katie had resigned from the Marines to focus on raising them. The human government had established a sanctuary on New Haven specifically for this purpose, a place where the cubs could grow up safely away from political tensions. Dr. Morgan had moved here too, serving as their physician and helping Katie navigate the complexities of raising alien children. The sanctuary wasn't just a house. It was a small compound with educational facilities, medical equipment, and enough security to make Katie feel safe. Jake had also left active service and now commanded the security force, a team of 12 people dedicated to protecting the cubs. The galaxy's attention had mostly moved on to other news, but the Crithians had not forgotten. Katie walked back toward the main building, the three cubs following her like ducklings. Inside, Dr. Morgan was preparing breakfast, something she insisted on doing despite having staff that could help. The kitchen smelled like fresh bread and the Velan equivalent of porridge, a grain-based meal that the cubs loved. "Morning, everyone," Lisa said cheerfully. "Who's hungry?" The cubs scrambled to the table, chattering about their morning adventures. Katie helped serve food, watching them eat with satisfaction. They were healthy, happy, and thriving. That was all that mattered. After breakfast, lessons began. The cubs were learning both human knowledge and Velan culture. Swift River had compiled extensive materials about Velan history, language, art, and philosophy. She visited once a month in person and joined their lessons remotely twice a week through video communication. The cubs were soaking up everything, eager to understand where they came from. Today's lesson was about Velan exploration traditions. Swift River's face appeared on the large screen in the learning room, her silver fur carefully groomed and her expression warm. The Velan were always curious. She explained in her gentle voice. "We built ships to explore space not for conquest or resources, but simply to learn. We wanted to understand the universe and meet other species. We believed knowledge was the greatest treasure." Hope raised her paw, a gesture she had picked up from watching human children in videos. "Teacher Swift River, if we loved learning so much, why didn't we learn to fight? Maybe if we had weapons, the Crithians couldn't have hurt us." Swift River's expression grew sad. "That is a question many survivors ask, little one. The truth is we believed so strongly in peace that we couldn't imagine someone would destroy us simply because they could. It was a failure of imagination, and we paid terribly for it. But I don't think the answer is to become like those who hurt us. The answer is to be strong in different ways, to build communities, to make allies, to show that compassion is not weakness." "Like Katie did," Spark said, looking at Katie with admiration. "She was strong enough to save us." "Exactly like Katie did," Swift River agreed. "She combined strength with compassion. That is a powerful thing." After lessons, Katie took the cubs outside for exercise. They loved to climb trees, their natural agility making them excellent climbers. Katie watched from below, ready to catch anyone who fell, though they rarely did. Their instincts were sharp, their movements graceful. Jake found her there, sitting on a bench and watching the cubs play. He sat down beside her with a tablet in his hand, his expression serious. "We got another report," he said quietly, showing her the screen. "Crithian ships near the border. They're doing sweeps of uninhabited systems. Intelligence thinks they're searching for something." Katie felt her stomach tighten. "Searching for what?" "Maybe other survivors from conquered worlds. Maybe information about where we're hiding the cubs. Hard to say, but they haven't given up, Katie. Vexthor made that clear when he left Station Epsilon. The Crithians don't forget challenges to their authority. Will they come here? Not directly. Too many species are watching now. If they attack New Haven openly, it would unite half the galaxy against them. But they're patient. They'll wait for an opportunity. Katie watched Hope swing from branch to branch, laughing with pure joy. The cub had no idea that somewhere out in space, powerful forces still wanted to claim her. That was how it should be. Children deserve to grow up without fear. Let them wait, Katie said firmly. We'll be ready, and we're not alone anymore. The council ruling changed things. Other species see us as allies now. Jake nodded. True. The Taraxians have offered to station a ship in this system permanently, just as a friendly presence, they say. The Beltherans want to send teachers to work with the cubs. Even some of the neutral species are making friendly gestures. You started something, Katie. A movement of people who are tired of Crithian bullying. I just saved 3 kids. You did more than that. You showed the galaxy that someone could stand up to the Crithians and win. Now others are asking, if humans could do it, why can't we? There are whispers about forming a coalition, multiple species working together for mutual defense. It's early yet, but the idea is spreading. That evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Katie sat on the porch with all 3 cubs curled around her. They were getting too big to all fit in her lap, but they tried anyway, seeking the comfort of her presence. Hope looked up at Katie with her bright eyes. Katie, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetie. Why did you save us? You didn't know us. You could have gotten in trouble. You did get in trouble, so why? Katie had known this question would come eventually. She thought carefully about her answer, wanting to give Hope something meaningful. Because you needed help and I could give it, Katie said simply. That's what I believe being human means. We look after those who can't look after themselves. We stand up for what's right even when it's hard. And when I saw you 3 freezing and alone, I knew I could never live with myself if I walked away. But you're one person, Hope said, her young voice puzzled. How could one person change everything? One person can't change everything alone, Katie replied. But one person can start something. I saved you 3. That inspired other people to help. Those people inspired others. Admiral Cruz stood up to the Crithians. The Taraxians came to support us. The council ruled in our favor. All of that happened because people chose to do the right thing, even when it was scary. That's how change works. One choice at a time. Spark, always the philosophical one despite his young age, added his thoughts. Swift River says the Valen believed in the power of small actions creating big changes. Like how one seed becomes a tree, and that tree makes more seeds, and eventually there's a forest. Exactly, Katie said, hugging them closer. You 3 are seeds too. You'll grow up and maybe help others. Maybe teach people that different species can live together. Maybe show the galaxy that children deserve protection no matter where they come from. You have your whole lives ahead of you. Luna, who had been quiet, spoke up softly. Will we ever meet other Valen? Real grown-up ones like us? Swift River is real and grown up, Katie pointed out gently. I know, but I mean lots of them. A community. Swift River talks about how the Valen used to gather and sing together. I want to experience that. Katie felt her heart ache. There were so few Valen left, scattered across the galaxy. The chances of rebuilding their civilization seemed impossible. But she had learned not to say things were impossible. 6 months ago, standing up to the Crithian Empire had seemed impossible too. Maybe someday, Katie said. The galaxy is big. There might be more survivors than we know about. And even if there aren't, you 3 will carry your culture forward. You'll remember the stories, practice the traditions, and someday teach others. The Valen aren't gone as long as you're alive. Hope snuggled deeper into Katie's arms. I'm glad you found us. Even though bad things happened, even though we lost our first families, I'm glad we have you now. I'm glad I found you too, Katie whispered. You 3 changed my life.